Hi, Diane here, today with another quick beading project. This is a little pendant made to go with a Lampwork Teardrop. The project includes some washers that you're going to rivet together and the beads that go along the side. I sell the kit, looks like this. I'm going to have this available on Jewelry Kit Marketplace on Facebook and probably on my website as well. The contents of the kit are all the little hardware you need and the beads that go in the project, along with basically everything you need except the beading thread, needle, mat, and some tools. So we're going to get started. For the first step of this project, we're going to need this little baggie that has all the little parts to attach the small and medium gears to each other. So this is what we have here. First thing we're going to do is attach the little gear to the larger one, and we're going to take the micro fastener, go through that little hole on the small gear, and then we're going to go through any gear on the larger gear, and then we're going to attach one of the little nuts on the back. Now I buy the 10mm long screws because it's really hard to start the nuts otherwise. And you might have problems doing this anyway. If you do, a tip for you is to use any sort of little rounded end stick. This is a crochet hook, but I can, anything that's shaped like that, the end of a paintbrush or whatever. This is a little bit of dental wax. Now, if you've got a kid with orthodontics, they have tons of this wax. Just put a little bit of wax on the end of the stick like that, and then come down at the screw at a 90-degree angle and push that wax down on it. And pick it up with the wax. Now it makes it really easy to get that started. You can see, but I'm not going to do this because I didn't have a problem, but I'll do it on the next one. Okay, so we're going to tighten this down, and we need a little tiny Phillips head to do that. Just put that on there, get it nice and tight, make sure it's aligned right. That looks good. Now we're going to attach the other side. Now to do that, we take the fastener, we go through the little enamel disc and through the dotty washer, and then through the little hole in the little tiny gear on that medium-sized washer. Tighten it up with the little Phillips head. I'm working around a giant camera setup here, so it's a little difficult for me to tell what I'm doing. But I'm screwing that nice and tight to the gear. And then I'm going to go through the hole that's opposite of the small gear. So it's that hole right there, I think. Yeah. Flip that over, and now I've got that other little nut on the end of this. Get that started on there. Tighten it down. Now that's tight. That's how the piece looks together. Now we're going to have to finish the rivet. Well, first I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. Ugh. Okay. To do the rivet, we have to cut off, you can see there's long ends on the backs of these screws. What we need to do is shorten that so we only have a little bit of metal to work with. So what I've included in the kits is a business card that has a hole cut through it. You're going to stick the screws through the hole like that, and then you're going to take some flush cutters, Now don't use your good flush cutters for this. Use this is a pair of Xuron. They're nice and heavy duty. Cutting these micro fasteners can damage your regular nice flush cutters. But you're putting that flush to the business card, pushing all the way down, and then you're going to cover that up with your finger or aim it away from you because it will shoot across the room. Cut that off. Now I'll put this up to the camera. You can see that leaves just a little bit of the screw left that you can turn into a rivet. So I'm going to cut off both ends. Where's the hole in that business card? There it is. Do that to the other screw. Getting nice and flush. Just going to aim it down so it doesn't shoot across the room. Okay, now we're ready to do our riveting, but I need to change my camera setup, so I'll be right back. Okay, I got my setup changed up, and I noticed when I was setting up that this medium-sized gear is quite loose. So just a word about tightening that down. We had tightened from the front and got it snug, but now it's loose again. The thing about these is when this fastener goes through the medium gear there, through that little nut-like thing, the hole in that is small enough that it really grabs on nicely to the micro fastener. And so if, you know, it's loose like this and we continue to tighten through the front, what we're doing is putting a bunch of pressure on that enamel disc and it will crack. What we need to do now is tighten the back nut. And the way to do that is with a flat nose plier. So I'm just going to tighten that up now from the back side by turning that. And it may loosen up again while we do the riveting. Okay, so it's tight for now, but we're going to do the riveting. And what we do is put the face of the little micro fasteners, it's kind of rounded here. We want that to sit on the bench block and balance like that. So as I'm hammering on this, I'm balancing this washer so that that face of the micro fastener is hitting the bench block. And that way it's taking the pressure of the riveting. So this is a riveting hammer, and I usually start with this. That's what the end looks like. And I'm just going to tap on the back of that micro fastener just lightly. I'm not hitting very hard, and I'm not coming up very high with the hammer, because if I go up real high, I'm going to miss it. What this is doing is spreading out the metal, and I'm turning it as I do it. You're making like a little mushroom cap of metal over the top of that nut. And you're making it nice and smooth. It really doesn't take much to do it. I'll bring this up to the camera. I can feel it, it's smooth. Now what I want to do is test it to see. If the rivet is done, then turning the screw backward, it's not going to come undone. It needs a little bit more. But it is nice and smooth. I usually move to a little planishing hammer like this one to do the final hammering. I'll test it again. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. So that's how you do the rivet. Now, when you have an enamel disc on there, what you want to make sure is that the enamel on the disc is not hitting the bench block. This has a little bit of a dome to it. And if that disc is hitting the bench block at all, it's going to crack when you do your hammering. I think this is going to be fine. I do have an alternative setup for when this happens. I'll show you in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and start with my riveting hammer. Just tapping lightly. switch to the planishing hammer. Now, these hammers are real nice. They're nice and small. But you can do this with a regular jeweler's hammer, starting out with the small end and hammering. But I just find it easier to control with these smaller hammers. Okay, if you have a situation where your enamel disc is actually hitting the bench block and not that screw, then what you can do is put a nail set into a bench vise, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm gonna have to back it up here. Okay, so then what you would do is seat the top of the micro fastener right in the end of that nail set, and it holds it securely. You just have to balance it there like that and hammer it when it's in the bench block, or when it's in the vise like that. But you shouldn't have a problem with these kits because I have a very shallow dome on that enamel piece. So that's the end of the riveting. This is still a little loose. I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and tighten that up again. That's nice and tight. Well, I thought it was. Anyway, alright, I guess it's just going to hang like that. What I do need to do is test the screw and make sure that it's nice and snug and it's not going to back out. No, that's nice and tight. So that's done. Another word, if you feel the backs of these, they should be nice and smooth. You don't want this to scratch your neck or snag your clothes. If you find that you can't get it so it's nice and smooth, what you can do is add a dab of clear nail polish on the back, and that will fill in any little gaps that might be scratchy. So that's it for riveting. On to the next step. Okay, we are on to step 4, which is adding row 1 edging beads with brick stitch. So you're going to pretend that there are no seed beads added to that little component there. What I did off camera was load about 3 feet of 8-pound Fireline on my needle, and we're going to use the packet of size 8O seed beads, which I've lost somehow. Stuck to the bottom of my bench block. Okay, and we're going to add the first row to this side here. I mean, you can see it's identical here, so I'm going to go through the steps on this side so you can see how to do it, and then you will do both sides. So I'm going to open up the little bead pack, get the beads out. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is go through this hole that's right next to the smallest gear. Go through, and we're going to tie a knot, leaving 4 or 5 inches of thread. I'm just tying a knot here. Okay, now we're going to start a row of brick stitch on here. I'm kind of keeping this tail in my left hand to keep it out of the way. So to start brick stitch, you pick up 2 of the 8O seed beads. We're going to go from the back through that first hole, pull the thread, and then we're going to seat those the way we want them and go back up through the bottom of the second bead and snug that up. Okay, they're seated nicely. Now I'm going to pick up one of the 8Os, And you have to decide which hole to go through. We're sewing through this big washer as the foundation row, and I think it's too far from this one to go through, so I'm going to move to the next hole. Go through from the back, pull the thread snug, and go back up through the bottom of that 8. That's nice there. Pick up another 8. And whoops, you're going to have to go back through the back side. I'm going to go ahead and go through this hole a second time. Pull that snug and go back up through the bottom of that 8. We're just going to keep doing the same thing, making a judgment about which hole to go through. Through from that hole. Back up through the bottom. These are really fast to make because there's just a little bit of beading to do, but I think they're a lot of fun. I have to work around my camera setup, so it's a little difficult for me to see what I'm doing. But there's not much else to it. It's just brick stitch. Most important thing is making sure your threads don't get tangled up as you're doing it. My first time through, I wound up with too many beads on the first row. So I'm going to count these now and see what I've got. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, and I think we're supposed to have 9 on this side, so we're going to do one more. And I'm going to go through that hole you can barely see. Kind of behind that medium washer, and I'm going to go back up through the bottom, and I have to make sure this thread doesn't get tangled up on that gear. So there, we've finished that row, and they're all seated nicely. Now to start the second row, we're really starting right where we are here. Okay, these are the beads that would be for the other side here that I've already done. So we're gonna pause here while I get out the beads for the next row, and I'll be right back. Okay, this is row 2, and it's a row of delicas. So I've dumped out the package, and this is just where we ended up with row 1. So I'm gonna pick up 2 delicas, and we're gonna put these on using brick stitch, and we're using the threads from row 1 as our foundation for the brick stitch of this row. So I went through the threads from row 1, pulling it tight. Well, not quite tight, but now I'm going back up through the bottom of the second delica that I added. Pull that snug. Now I'm going to pick up 1 delica, go under the foundation thread from the back, pull it up snug, and go up through the bottom of that bead, if I can get there from here. Ugh, whoops. Guess I went through the foundation thread. Let's start that over again. From the back through to the front. Got that twisted a little bit. Okay, hopefully I won't go under the foundation thread when I come back up. Okay, there's that one. We just keep on adding delicas one at a time until we reach the end of this row. Okay, add one more, and then I'll probably turn off the camera and finish the row and meet you at the end here. Okay, so you just keep going like that till the end of the row, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm almost to the end of this row. I'm going to pick up one more that I have left to do and go under the thread from the previous row, and then back out through the bottom of the bead I just added. And not tangle the thread. Okay, now we're back to the the bead we first started with, which is a little loose. So I'm going to use this opportunity. I've come out that delica. I'm going to go back down through that first row, through that washer, and then up through both of these beads. Okay, now I'm ready to start the fringe row. But first thing I want to do is count the number of beads I have on here. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, I have 15 beads on there, which is an odd number. So, that's good. I'll be right back. Okay, we are ready to start step 6, which is attaching the fringe row. What I have done to get ready for this is empty out the remaining bead packs. We have 11 O's in the first color. We have demis, 6 O. We have cube beads. These are 3 millimeter, but you can use anything between 2 and 4. And then another 11O seed bead in gold, which is going to be the stop bead. So what you're going to need to do, whoops, I need to thread my needle. Okay. So this is where we left off in the last step, with the thread coming out of the last delica we added. So we're going to pick up an 11O, a demi, a cube, and another 11O in the second color. That last 11O we picked up is a stop bead, so we're not going to go back through that one. We're going to go back through the cube and the demi, and not that first 11. We're going to pick up a second 11, and then we're going to go back through that row into the second delica. So each one of these fringes, cube stacks, is going to straddle 2 delicas. I'm just going to tighten that down. And there's the first one. Okay, now we're going to exit the third delica. Oops, and not get that tail tangled. Get out of the way. Okay, now we're going to repeat that. So we pick up an 11, a demi, a cube, and another 11. Skip that last 11 because that's our stop bead. Pick up the cube and the demi. Whoops. And another, pick up a 11. and come back through the 4th delica and tighten that down. So there's the next one. We're going to exit the next delica in the line. Pick up an 11, a demi, a cube, and another 11. Skip the stop bead, go through the cube and the demi, skip that last 11, pick up a new 11, go back in through the next delica. So each one of these is straddling 2, and because we have a odd number of delicas on here, we'll have one left over in the end, and that's fine. If you have an even number of delicas, great. If you don't, it's going to work either way. You gotta remember to exit through the next delica. Pick up an 11, demi, cube, 11 stop bead. Slide them down. Skip the stop bead, go back through the cube and the demi, but not that first 11. Pick up a new 11. Go back in through the next demi. Delica. Kinda new to beading. I don't know the names of all these beads very well. I really do enameling. I love enameling, but I like to find new ways to use them, incorporating them in with gears and seed beads and whatever else I can think of. So these kits come with a teardrop lampwork bead that gets dangled off of this, or maybe it's this end, I can't remember right now. But I'm going to do them with my enamel focals as well, so I suppose that'll be another kit coming out soon. So we're just repeating this all the way to the end of the row. Sometimes if it doesn't sit centered properly, I just pull that stop bead out and center it and then tighten it back up. Oops, I forgot to come out a delica before I started that row. Alright, well, I'm going to meet you when I'm at the end and we'll go over the next step. Okay, I'm just adding my last little cube stack on here. And you can see I've got an extra delica bead at the end here. I'm just finishing this one up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've ended on this delica. I'm going to go down through this green and pull that through. Oops, it got entangled. Now I'm going to come up all 3 of these edge beads and back into the fringe again. First I'm going to pull that nice and snug. Okay, so I'm going up. You can see I've come in through the back side here. I want to make sure this thread doesn't get tangled, so I'm going to bring it behind. And I've gone up through all the beads in that last stack. Now that's tied in the last of the first row, tied it in tight, and I've gone all the way back up into that first, or the last cube stack added. Now I'm going to go across the stop bead and back down all the way into the foundation row, which is the delicas. If I can get my needle in there. Okay, so I'm through the demi, gonna go through that 11 into the delica row. So now I've sewn through this one twice. I'm gonna go back up through the next delica into that stack, the second stack. And not getting my thread tangled. Basically, I'm going back through all of the fringe a second time to make it nice and secure. So I'm going across the stop bead, back down, and when I go back down, I'm going to go down through the second, this tan color. So I'm going backwards, and I'm going to go zigzagging through all of these cube stacks until I get back to the end. And I'll catch you at the end of that. You can see what I'm doing. Just follow along till you get to the end. Okay, I'm ready for the last couple steps of this project, and what I've done is gotten out the Lampwork Teardrop and the embellishing beads for that section, and the little link that is for the bail. So the first thing we're going to do is attach the bail. That's this little link here. It's already open, so we're just going to slide that onto the medium gear there. And then we're going to pinch this closed. I've got my flat nose pliers here, pinching that closed, and then I'm going to have to work it with the round nose. What I do here is kind of roll it back and try to get one side to go under the other to exert some pressure on here. So I'm just pushing down as I'm rolling. These are pretty stiff links, and I'm going to do the same thing, flipping it over. Again, rolling downward to tighten this. There, that's nice and closed. So that's the bail. Okay, the next step is to attach the Lampwork Teardrop. So the beads go on here. First I'm going to pick up a O bead, then the cube, then another O bead, and then the demi. Slide those down, and then I'm going to make a 90-degree bend about 1/4 of an inch up from the end. Well, first you push all the beads flush against that Lampwork Teardrop. Then grab it about 1/4 of an inch in and make a 90-degree turn. So you can see that's what we've got here. Now I'm going to make a big loop, and I'm going to go on the edge of my pliers, right where the loops are the longest. I'm going to roll that back to make a loop that sits on top. And I'll show you the side view there. Whoops. Alright, I'm going to straighten this up because it's a little sloppy. What you want is a loop that sits on top of the bend like that. So that's pretty good. Now I'm going to twist it open like that, and I'm going to thread this through the hole in the small washer, the small gear. Okay, now it's on there like that. Now I'm going to go once around, nice and tight around that stem. Okay, here we go. It's one time around nice and tight, And now I'm going to do a very loose, messy wrap to take up the rest of that space. So I'm not pulling it tight, I'm just going around loosely. This is a nice soft wire because when the lamp work is put on there, it gets nice and annealed. Uh-oh, got that demi stuck up in there. Get out! What can I do to get that out? There we go. Alright, so loose wraps. Get out of there. And now that I'm getting down to the end of the wire, I'm going to push all those beads down toward the lamp work. Oh, that demi. And I'm going to go tight around once to keep those beads down where they belong. And I'm going to use a plier to get it around nice and tight. Now you have to be careful when you're pushing this wire in not to break the beads. I might just use my fingernails, it's that soft a wire. And I'm just spinning these around to make them tighter. And there it is, the finished project. That's nice. Okay, that's all there is to it. Hope you liked the video. Thanks. Bye-bye.